So in today's session, what we are going to talk about is the launch of these new APIs, which will facilitate the PIR reporting from the mesh system itself. So which will mean that you will no longer have to juggle around two systems, which is the TCSI portal and the mesh system, and do things manually. So this is to limit the manual process and facilitate API reporting. So let's see what we are going to cover in the session today. So as you can see, there are a few points that we are going to look at today. The first thing is the introduction to PIR API data reporting. So first we'll try to understand what API is and what PIR APIs mean for you as a provider. We'll then look at the advantages and limitations. So there is a bit of a limitation of using this feature as well, which I'll walk you through. Compared to the advantages, obviously the limitation is quite underwhelming, but it's important to note that there is a limitation of using the API feature. We'll then also talk about the PIR API reporting interface in the system. So with the launch of this PIR APIs, if you start using the feature, it's going to be a new interface altogether. You're not going to use the standard or the existing interface that you use in the system. So that's going to be a complete new UI for you to use. We'll also go through the PIR data packets. What we will try to cover in this part of the presentation is what will be the flow of data reporting and what will be the flow of data deletions if required. So with an example, we'll try to understand how this will function. We'll then talk about the Proda or B2B device setup, which is very important for the API service to work, and finally see how the PIR data can be reported using APIs. So let's make a start and try to understand what PIR APIs do or what they actually mean. So as you know, PIR is request for information under the TCSI Act. So any provider who is not a fee help approved or HISA approved provider falls under the category of PIR or provider information request. So any of the higher ed providers who have joined in today, if you are a fee help approved provider or approved under HISA Act, you do not have to comply with PIR reporting requirements. Your reporting requirements differ and they are the HISA reporting requirements. So all data that you report under PIR goes in form of data packets, each consisting data elements. So every data packet will have different data elements. You can also check your reporting requirements and understand what TCSI actually expects you to report using this link below here, which is provided in the presentation. Now, what API will mean for you is that the two systems, mesh system and the TCSI system, will be linked together. The way to link these two systems together is the Proda or B2B device. So what it basically does is from our system to TCSI, every time the user presses a specific button, it tries to send a request to TCSI to allow post, patch, or delete functions. Based on that, TCSI will send a response back to Meshed with some errors, warnings, or a success message that if the response is successful. So there is an exchange of information between the two systems, which does not require the user to go into the TCSI portal manually and submit data. So what is the basic flow of PIR API reporting? So how it basically works is that everything you do for PIR APIs or PIR data reporting using API will stay in the mesh system itself, and you will only use the TCSI system or TCSI database to view data or to understand data. But any editing, updating, deletions, or data process that you need to do, that will be done via the mesh system only. So the first step, what you're currently also doing is recording data in the mesh system. So you just record data for students, campus, course, enrollment, staff, everything in the mesh system itself. Once you have recorded the data, instead of extracting the data files, you can directly send that data from mesh to taxi, which will be done via the use of a B2B or Proda device, which we will talk about in the further slides. Once you send that data from mesh to taxi, you will receive a real-time response from taxi. So this real-time response can be in terms of success or failure. If it is a success, that the record has been created successfully or deleted successfully, TCSI will return a UID. So what a UID is, it is a unique identifier or a unique reference number for each record that you submit to taxi. So that UID indicates that the record that you have sent from our system or the mesh system exists in TCSI database with that UID or reference number. However, once you report that data, if TCSI does not return a UID and gives you a failure or error message instead, it means that you need to fix some data in the mesh system. So once you have received some sort of messages, you can go back and refer to the validation sheets from Taxi and start fixing data in the mesh system in relevant sections. Once that data is fixed, you can delete any relevant records that you have reported first for that data and re-report that data to Taxi unless you get a success message. So this is the basic flow of the process. This is how the process will work once you start using API. You can understand more about API and how it will function in terms of Taxi by going to this Taxi support page, which is the main resource for TCSI and PIR data. Moving forward to our next topic for today, which is advantages and limitations of using this API feature. So once you start using the API, there are definitely many advantages. As we can see here, the basic advantage or the foremost advantage is timely data reporting. As PIR providers usually wait for a reporting deadline to come and then start compiling their data. But once you start using API, you have more time in hand and resource in hand to fix the data and report the data as it becomes available. So you do not have to wait till the very end to do data reporting. Once the data is available in the mesh system, you can start reporting the data as soon as it becomes available. Secondly, there is seamless and streamlined PIR data submission. So there is no hassle of juggling around the two systems, extracting data from meshed and going to Taxi data entry portal to make an upload, or then fixing the data in two systems, because whatever you do will stay in the mesh system, and then just by a click of a button, you can send it to Taxi, which is real-time data reporting, deletions, and validations from Taxi. So anything that you do using this API feature in the mesh system will be in real time. So you send a request to Taxi and Taxi returns a response in real time, which is quite easier and much more efficient than using the Taxi data entry portal. It also eliminates manual data reporting on the Taxi portal, which I've mentioned quite a few times now. So there'll be no need for you to extract any data files or check data in Taxi data entry portal because the data becomes transparent. You can view the data in mesh system itself, and which will indicate how it sits in Taxi and how it currently exists in our system. Given these advantages, there is also a slight limitation which should be kept in mind. So when you're using this PIR APIs, these are not fully developed on TCSI's end. So there are certain restrictions on using the API feature from TCSI's end, and that restriction comes in terms of data update or patch feature. So when we talk about data update, you can think of any data packet that you may need to update after you have reported it for the first time. So since the data update feature is not available in API, it will mean that anytime you make any update or changes to any data record that you have already reported or submitted to Taxi, you will need to delete any relevant records along with that data packet and re-report everything, repost everything. So instead of updating the data directly, the process is you delete the data and repost the data. So that is a slight limitation of using this feature. We'll also cover it in terms of one of the examples that I'll show you later. But just to understand here, data update part is not available in PIR APIs from TCSI's end. So let's look at the new PIR API reporting interface and what icons does it contain and where it is actually located. So once you sign up for these PIR APIs and you start using this feature, you will no longer have to go to the PIR reports in our system to extract data. Once you log in as an admin user or as an S-admin user, you will see this TCSI tab on the home page. So this TCSI tab is for the TCSI API feature. And once you go under this tab or under this page, you will see this new interface, which looks quite similar to what you're currently using, but it has some additional parameters and additional icons that we'll talk about in the next slides. So if you're a PIR reporting provider, you will see your reporting type by default coming as PIR, which means that you're reporting to taxi under this header, and all your submission type or your data packets will be listed in the next filter. So let's look at the different parameters and what is the exact purpose of each parameter on this new interface. So the first option or drop down, as we talked about in the last slide, is reporting type. So this reporting type will be by default based on the data you have in the system. If you are a PIR higher ed provider, the reporting type by default will be PIR. Submission type. Now, submission type is your data packets. So you will have all your data packets listed in the drop-down submission type. You can filter out which packet you want to send to taxi. So there'll be course of study, course, student, campus, all those packets listed in a sequence or a chronology. You can select the packet you want to check or report, and based on that, the data in the grid will load for you. Status. This third filter is used to bring the list of data on the page. So status could be processed, not processed, or all. So processed is any record that has been reported to taxi. Not processed is a record which is a new record and has not been sent. And all is a combination of both. So by default, status filter will have the selection as all, but you will be able to select only processed records or only not processed ones. Reporting year is another filter which is used to filter the reporting year that you are trying to report to taxi. By default, it will be the current year, but you can also change it to any year that you like. Reporting period will also change based on the reporting year. By default, it will be the current date, but you can also put in any date range that you want to check. And based on that, the grid for you to check and report data will appear. The other two, there'll be two checkboxes on this page here. If I go back to this slide, you can see there are two checkboxes here, update only and migrated only. These two checkboxes were never present on the old interface. So these two checkboxes, what they do for you is they filter data further. So if you use the first checkbox, which is update only, it is used to bring the records that have an update trigger and needs to be synced to taxi. What it will indicate for you is if you have changed any information. For example, you have reported a student record to taxi, and later on you have changed the student address, for example. So this update only trigger will give you a trigger or a highlight next to that record to indicate that there is something which has changed and you need to update it in taxi as well. So if you click this checkbox update only, the system will only bring those records which have an update trigger or where there is something changed. Migrated only, this is only used when you have some migrated records in the system. So data migration is done by our team here. If you have any migrated data, you can use this checkbox migrated only and the page will only bring the migrated records. Each migrated record will have the word migrated next to it as a reference only. If you do not have any migrated records, then this checkbox will not bring anything for you. So these are just the parameters that are available on this page to be used. Next, we are moving to new icons and purpose. So as you can see, there are many icons that will appear on this new UI for you. So we'll go through each of these icons to understand what each icon is and what it actually does. This first icon here, which looks like a magnifying glass, is a preview icon. So what it does is before you send any data to taxi or before you report any data, you can click this icon and the system will show you what you are trying to report. So for one student, if you click on this record, it will tell you, okay, for this student, these are the elements that we are trying to send in a data packet. The next button, which is this green tick button, is an icon which allows you to send data to taxi. So this button is used to post or send data and it only appears for new records. Next is delete button and this blue eye icon. These two icons appear when you have already sent the data. So once it is a new or a fresh record, you will see the green icon. After you click the green icon and TCSI gives you a success message, the green button will change to these two buttons. The deletion button, as the name suggests, it allows you to delete any data. So once you click this delete button, the API will try to delete it in taxi database and also from our grid. So this once you click on delete, that record will appear as a new record. And you can see the green button appearing again for you to repost the data. The blue icon is used to view what data you have reported to taxi. So after you have reported successfully, this blue button is taxi return data. So taxi will give you a response. This is what I have received. The next button is the update trigger, which I was mentioning just a bit earlier. So this update trigger will appear next to any record where there has been any change in the mesh system. So if you have changed any data element that impacts that record, you will see this update trigger. And this indicates that you need to delete and repost that record to taxi so that taxi can also receive that update. After these icons, we've got a few buttons that allow you to do bulk selections and bulk exports. So the first button that you can see here is the response Excel. So this response Excel, what it does is it appears next to every data packet. So you will see it in course of study, student, every data packet. And once you click on this response Excel, it will try to download all response from taxi into an Excel format for you to view. So let's say you're trying to report 20 records or 30 records at once. Just because it is a bit difficult for the user to view errors for each record in the grid, you can simply click on this button and it will download an Excel file for you to view everything in a more simpler format, I would say. Process selected, this button is used to do bulk send or bulk report. So you can select up to 20 records at once and then click on this process selected, and then system will try to send all 20 records to taxi in one go. But what you need to be careful about in using process selected is that once you try to send 20 records at once, you can receive multiple errors for each record, and then you'll have to fix them all one by one. Export reported, this button is used to download an Excel file for any data that has been reported to taxi already. So if you have records that have been reported and if you want to know what you have reported for each record, you can click on export reported and it will download an Excel file for you to view. So these are the icons that will appear on that new UI for you to use. Once you start using the feature and get more comfortable with these icons, they are fairly easy to operate, but this is just an overview to understand what each icon will mean and what it actually does. Moving forward, sorry. We have the PIR data packets. So in PIR data packets, we are going to look at some example and data flow to understand what is the data flow for student and staff data. So as you know, as a PIR provider, your responsibility is to report student data as well as staff data. Student data, there are multiple packets, but staff data has got 3 data packets. Now, as you can see, I have listed all the data packets in a sequence here. Even in the user interface, when you go to TCSI to report data, our dropdown will list these packets in this sequence only. So what this sequence ideally means is that you are supposed to report each data packet in this chronology itself. You cannot report course on campus before reporting course of study, course in campus. So it has to be in a sequence. So the first packet is the course of study packet. Then we have the course packet. So the data for course of study and course packets in our system come from the course manage page in our system. Campus, which is the third packet, takes information from the manage venue section in our system. Course on campus will be automatically generated in for reporting to taxi based on these 3 data packets that you report. Student, which is an independent packet at this stage, is any data for student. So for any student, if we have recorded the TCSI information, that student will be listed for you to report. Once you have reported the student, you can report students' enrollment details, which include course admission and unit enrollment packets. Exit award is an optional packet. It is only required to be reported if you have any student who has any exit course or nested course. If there are no students with exit or nested courses, you can leave this packet as it is. There's no need to report this packet. Similarly, for staff data, the three packets are staff full-time, staff casual actual, and staff casual estimate. Based on the data that you record for each staff in the system under the TCSI icon, staff full-time and staff casual actual packets get generated. Staff casual estimate, the system does the calculations itself based on the data that you record and generates the casual estimate packet as well. So let's try to understand how the API feature will work in terms of posting and deleting some data. So what example we look at here is changes made in course of study packet after the student unit enrollments are reported. So as we have discussed in the previous slide that there is a certain flow of data and you cannot report certain packets first without reporting the others. This means that you have to delete and post the data in that sequence itself. So let's say you have reported a student course admission and unit enrollments in a certain course. But after that, there are some changes that you have made in the course itself. So what it means is that you will need to do the deletions first. So how the deletions will work is bottom to up, which means you will delete the unit enrollment records first. So any unit enrollments that are made for that particular course will need to go. So you can use the red button and delete everything. Once this is done, you can start to delete the course admissions for that relevant course. Once the course admissions are deleted, you can proceed to delete course on campus. There is no need to delete student because student, once you unlink the course admission and unit enrollments, the student becomes an independent packet. So we can leave the student packet as it is. You can delete the course on campus, delete course and delete course of study. So we work our way bottom up and we delete anything that we have recorded for reported for unit enrollments and work our deletions up to course of study. So what it does is it will unlink everything and you can delete the course of study because the change has been made in course of study. After all the deletion is done, you can again post the records or send the records. And this time when you send the records, you will start from course of study itself. So we will post the updated course of study record, post the relevant course, then report course on campus, student course admission and unit enrollments. So deletions will be done bottom to up, but reporting will be done top to bottom. Another thing to note here is once you report course of study, course and course on campus, because these details do not change every few months or every few years, you do not have to re-report them over and over. So once this data is reported, that's it. You do not have to worry about reporting it again unless there has been a change or unless you are offering a new course or new course of study which was not reported earlier. So unlike the PIR data files where you extract all data, once you report data in API, it exists in Taxi. So you do not have to re-report all these details. The only details that you will be re-reporting every time is or reporting new records is course admissions, unit enrollments, or any new students who have joined in. So this is just an example to understand how the data posting and deletion will work in terms of API. Let's move forward to the next part of the presentation, which is Proda Setup or B2B device setup. So what Proda actually means is provider's digital identity. Proda is a necessary setup to be done to use API service. For data reporting using manual files, you may or may not need Proda in the mesh system. But once you start using the API service, or if you're willing to use the API service, you must do the B2B Proda device setup. So there are a few steps that I have listed here. However, more details can be found on this link here. And if you also reach out to us in terms of Proda Setup, we can also offer you some detailed guides. So what you basically need to do first is create an individual Proda account for yourself. Second step is to register your organization in your individual Proda account. So once you have created your Proda account as an individual, you can link your organization. Third part is to link taxi service and add taxi as a service provider to that organization. Once taxi is added, you can register and activate a software instance or a B2B device. So this B2B device is used to connect the two systems, meshed and taxi together. After you have created this device, you can record the device details in our system, which will allow you to get the taxi integration running. One thing to note here is that we cannot do this setup on your behalf. You will have to create the Proda device and the B2B device on your end itself, because it is done in the MyGov account or the Proda account for your organization, which we do not have access to. We can only help you to put those details in the mesh system once you have those details. So this is where you can put those details in our system. So once you log in and go to the TCSI interface, which I've just shown you in the previous slides, you will see there is a next page here, which is Configure Proda. So under Configure Proda, you have certain sections to fill up. The first section is Proda device name. So this Proda device name is your B2B device name. Once you register and create a B2B device on the Proda portal, you will get a B2B device name. So that's the same name that you need to record in this page here. Then there is Proda organization ID. This is the organization ID for your college or for your provider. That organization ID will also appear on the same page, and you can just put it here. Proda OTP or activation code is a one-time code that you receive, and once you have that code, you can just simply paste it here. Once you put these three details, you can click on Save. After you click on Save, you will see that the Activate button will be highlighted for you to click on Activate. You can click on Activate and click on Get Token. So what Get Token does for you is it will try to see if we are able to fetch a token from this device or not. If you see a message in green, it means it's a success. The integration's been set up and running smoothly. If it is a message in red or something like device not active, then it means that the B2B device that you've created is not able to connect the two systems together. In such cases, you will need to do the setup again. Reset Proda account is used when you have to reset these device details. So once you have these device details, and if they expire or if something changes, you can click on reset, and these fields again will become empty for you to populate the information. Once these details are set up, you will also see the device expiry date appearing just at the bottom here. So the system will give you the key expiry date and the device expiry date. These dates are an indication on when the device expires. So before that expiration date, you have to go to the Proda again and create a new B2B device with the same name. So that date is an indication for you to keep in check that you have to renew the device before it expires to keep the service running. If you do not renew the device, the service stops and you will be unable to report any data to taxi using the API feature. With this, we come to the last part of the presentation, which is reporting PIR data via API. So once you have done all the setup and you have understood what the UI has and how the B2B device needs to be set up, what the data flow needs to be, you can finally start reporting data using PIR APIs. So as I mentioned, these are some key points to note if you start using API. First thing is that you report data to taxi in the sequence of the data packets, which is in a chronology. You report course of study first and then go to course. You cannot report course first without reporting course of study. So that sequence has to be kept in mind. Each record, if you report it to taxi and it is a success, you will receive a UID, which is a reference number from taxi. This reference number is the number that indicates with what ID does the record sit in the taxi database. If you do not get this UID from taxi, it means that the record has some sort of error or warnings that need to be fixed in the system. To resolve errors or warnings, you can refer to this validation spreadsheet, which is the latest validation spreadsheet available from taxi. You can use this link here, or you can go to the taxi support page. Each error that you receive from taxi or each warning that you receive from taxi has a unique ITSP code, which allows you to view that error or find out the resolution for that error in this spreadsheet itself. Once you have figured out what the error is or what the warning message is, you can update the data in the mesh system in relevant sections. So for example, if the error is in unit enrollment packet for the student, you know that some of the unit enrollment information needs to be updated. To do that, you can go to student results page and update the relevant information. Once you have made the updates, you can go back to the reporting page and try to resubmit the data. Another important thing, which is a note point for everyone who is using the API service or will want to use the API service, is that once you start reporting the data from API, you cannot report the data using the manual data entry. Because what it does is it gives data inconsistency. If you try to use both of these systems at once, you have to choose only one data reporting method and stick with it to do your taxi reporting. So if you're doing data reporting via manual data entry on taxi portal, you cannot use API and vice versa. Because once you report anything manually on the taxi portal and do not use API, API will not know, or the two systems meshed in taxi will not communicate with each other because the record that exists in taxi does not align with what sits in the mesh system. So keeping these points in mind, you can start using the API service. With this, we come to the end of the session. I hope this session was useful in understanding what the new feature is that we have launched, which is the PIR APIs. If you are interested in using the PIR APIs or if you have any queries, please put it down in the chat box and you can reach out to us even using the support email, which is support@meshgroup.com.au, and we will respond back as soon as possible. Thank you for your participation today.